This podcast contains our own personal views, not associated with any organisation. Coronial contains descriptions of death inquests that may be graphic and disturbing to some listeners. Discretion is advised. Welcome back, everyone, to Coronial. I'm Alice.
I'm Georgie.
I'm Emma.
Today I'm going to be telling you about the inquest into the death of Nigel Harris on the 14th of June 2022 during the Finke Desert Race.
Oh, this is a recent one.
Yes, it is. This death was investigated by the coroner as it was an unexpected death, and the coroner's opinion was that the risks of the race were not appropriately mitigated. So a bit of background.
What sort of race was it again?
It's a car and motorbike race.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Nigel was born in 1961, was in the Navy for 22 years and then became a customs officer before retiring to enjoy travelling and photography.
Perfect.
The Finke Desert Race is a motorsport event where motorbikes, cars and off-road buggies race from about 15 kilometres south of Alice Springs to the remote community of Apachula, which used to be known as Finke, and then they go back again. So this is a distance of 226 kilometres each way, and in 2021 they raced the outbound leg on Saturday the 13th of June, and then the return leg on Monday the 14th of June. The race travels through Crown land, Aboriginal Land Trust land, road reserve and private property.
Interesting. Like private property as well.
Because it's super remote and they're all on dirt roads, so I think some of it just they happen to pass through people's properties.
Yep.
Finke Desert Race Incorporated, which I will now refer to as FDRI because that's a lot easier, are the organisers of the event, which needs approval from Motorcycling Australia and Motorsport Australia. Motorsport Australia used to be known as the Confederation of Australian Motorsport, or CAMS. When an event is sanctioned, Motorsport Australia appoints officials to carry out various functions at the event. In February 2021, one of those officials wrote to Motorsport Australia requesting a permit to run the event, and this permit was granted in March. FDRI also sought approvals from other agencies, including Northern Territory Police, St John's Ambulance Australia, and the Department of Infrastructure, Planning and Logistics. In 2021, there were 340 four-wheeled vehicles and 538 motorcycles racing, and approximately 14,000 spectators camped along the track. So on Saturday the 12th of June, there was a prologue, which was a timed 8.3 kilometre lap to determine the starting positions for the race the next day. There is evidence that Nigel attended this in the afternoon because there were some photos on his camera. Before the start of the race on Sunday, 2 zero-sweep cars each drove half of the track checking for obstacles or safety issues. Once they confirmed that the track was clear, the race could start. There was also a second sweep of the track between the four-wheel drives and the motorcycle competitions. So the four-wheel drives went first and then the motorcycles went after them. Nigel attended the start of the race on Sunday and then went out to the 40-kilometre marker where he was taking photos and chatting to some other spectators. Some race competitors told a steward that there were spectators crossing the track and standing close on the outside of corners, but there is no evidence that anything was actually done about this by the organisers.
Recommend against it, but...
Yes.
Yep.
On Monday, Nigel was at the 35-kilometre sand dune. So the track here is about 5 metres wide with grass edges, and the approach to the dune is gradual but with a sharp drop and 2 bumps, which they call whoops.
Okay.
Yep. On the other side. So after the drop, the track curves to the right.
So I imagine there's a risk you're going to miss that curve, though, and plough straight through, or?
Not necessarily. Like they can sort of see it. This part of the track was signed by FDRI with pre-danger and danger signs to alert competitors to the upcoming hazards so they can adjust their speed as they need to. There was also about 20 metres of bunting placed 5 metres back from each side of the track where this dune was to restrict spectator access and indicate that it was a dangerous area. So the 35-kilometre dune was well known as one of the more popular spots because of the good view of the dune and the whoops and the exciting action that can happen there with vehicles coming down there and...
The whoopsies.
Yeah, exactly.
The vehicle's flying.
Yes.
Absolutely. Can understand.
There were about 100 to 200 spectators in the area of that jump, and about 20 to 30 people in the immediate vicinity of Nigel. There were no officials monitoring spectator safety in this area, and there were no instructions there about safe distance and practices for the spectators. They were essentially left to their own devices.
Yep.
Are you starting to see how badly this is going to go?
I mean, yeah, you're painting a good picture.
Nigel was standing on the northwestern side of the dune after the drop in the whoops and where the track had started to curve to the right. He was beyond where the bunting ended, so he wasn't behind any bunting. There was no bunting sort of where he was.
Okay, right.
Because it had already ended.
Yeah, so it's not like he was in front of the bunting. It was just that it didn't
Correct.
exist where he was standing. Yep.
And he was close to the edge of the track.
Oh, sorry, can I clarify? Was the bunting put up by the race organisers?
Yes, it was. At 9:36 a.m, a trophy truck, which is a highly modified two-wheel drive used for desert racing. You're welcome to Google a picture of it.
Sure.
The vehicle approached the dune and slowed down accordingly. Witnesses said they were going at a reasonable speed for that part of the track and similar to what other competitors had been doing when considering that they were racing. After going over the crest of the dune, the truck hit the whoops and suffered a suspension failure. This meant that the driver had no control of the direction of the truck and it veered sideways.
Cool. That's not ideal.
No. While this was happening, Nigel continued to take photographs, seemingly oblivious to the danger of the out-of-control vehicle.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Like, if you're, like, focused on the viewfinder, how easy it is to not understand your surrounds in terms of that
it's happening
danger.
very quickly as well.
True, but would those who were otherwise just watching, rather than watching through a view,
Yeah.
have been more aware?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
And this was also, it seems that the first sort of motorsport event he had gone to
Yeah, fair.
as well. Nigel was hit by the front driver's side wheel, which knocked him forwards before the truck ran him over. It continued for another 15 metres and hit another spectator who was injured but not
Run over?
seriously harmed. When the truck came to a stop, Nigel was found underneath it.
Oh, he was dragged. Oh.
Everyone who's listening to this, I encourage you to go and look at the inquest document. There are photos from a different view. Someone was standing behind Nigel and was taking photos, and you can sort of see the progression of events.
Oh, wow.
Obviously not up until the point where he gets hit. Yeah, and there were some other witnesses who said that they sort of realised what was happening and moved out of the way, but it was really only luck that saved them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's also some good photos in this inquest about how many people were actually around.
Yeah, because that makes it look like he's the sole person there in that series.
So the first photos were on page 3 and this one is on page 16. So you can see that it's out of control there.
But there's heaps of other people around. Yeah.
He is standing here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Very, very lucky other people.
Yeah. So there are definitely a fair amount of other people who are right next to him. He's not
Yeah.
alone by himself on the side of the track.
Could you imagine if you're asking those spectators to move back, though? I don't know. Everyone's going to want to be up
Yes,
like,
because they
at
want to
that
see the action.
line of sight.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
and especially
yeah.
if you're taking photos. I think he had a conversation with someone else who was also there taking photos that, you know, if you want to get the good shots, you kind of need to be in the dangerous
Zone.
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. The spectator thing is something that, so Group B rally used to be a thing, and that was essentially, it was just a category of rally racing in the 80s, but it ended up being banned because of a few major accidents that included fatalities, and it's because the spectators were so close to the edge of the track, and like some of them were even in the middle of the road, and then they would run out of the way when the car came.
Oh, yes, I totally have memory of those kinds. Well, I wasn't around in the 80s, but I have memories of those kinds of events of...
Yeah, like you just look up footage of those and it's just insane that risks that people were willing to take.
For, spectator photos and stuff.
With so many spectators around, there were a lot of people who were able to come to Nigel's aid, including a former paramedic. But unfortunately, Nigel was already deceased. St John's ambulance arrived first at 10 a.m, followed by the Southern Traffic Operations members and additional police. Nigel's autopsy revealed that his cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries, including laceration of the heart, tearing of the pericardial sac, and other significant internal injuries.
Yeah.
And they determined that it was likely that he died on impact.
He would have gone quickly,
Yeah.
at least.
And like there was no paramedic intervention that would change that outcome
No.
in any way.
Yeah, and so that the paramedic, or former paramedic who was there, was able to treat the other spectator who was
Yeah.
injured but survived.
Right.
The trophy truck was inspected after the accident, and it was found that the left-hand lower rear axle trailing arm had fractured through 90% of its surface area,
Yes, that one.
causing the rear wheels, which were what steered the vehicle, to turn it to the left.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they like had no control.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, the vehicle was in good condition with no other defects.
I'm just thinking, can you imagine being the driver?
That's a heavy hit they took.
Yeah, in that race, there's a driver and a navigator, and the navigator was able to give evidence to police at the time, but was too traumatized to speak at the inquest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the navigator's going to feel so responsible that they didn't, like, I don't know, change what they said to the driver to slow it down. But, like, again.
It was a split second.
They weren't going 100 kilometres an hour.
And if you'd hit it at a slightly different angle,
Yeah.
you know, it may not have broken the suspension, or just like on that day, that was the day the suspension was going to go, no matter how hard you'd hit it.
It's not a good thing that someone died.
Yeah, but it could have been so much worse. But also, again, were they aware or expecting people to be there
Yeah.
in that vicinity as well? So, again, so many elements to
Yeah.
all of these cases that had to have occurred for something to have this ending.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there was a history of spectator safety concerns at the Finke race. So before the 2018 race, FDRI went to CAMS, Notice Sporting Body, to help in developing improved safety and procedures for the event. The motorsport safety advisor for CAMS, Mr. Bennett, attended the 2018 race and wrote a report with some recommendations.
Did they follow any of them?
We'll get to that.
You're not filling me with hope here.
No.
There were only recommendations.
So the issues he found. The number of spectators in the first 40 kilometres was far more than expected. There were no measures in place to prevent or limit access to the competition track. There was no fencing or other barriers to separate competitors from spectators. There were no officials allocated to be spectator marshals at any location. And the whole course lacked supervision in terms of spectator control. He did not think that, quote, we can continue to allow nothing to be done, and that better oversight of spectators is a duty of care of the event.
Absolutely. But, like, yeah, so it basically was like, it should be a duty of care, but they
Yeah.
basically have provided zero. Okay. At which point they've gone and had a report commissioned because they're like, maybe we should consider this.
Yes, we should consider it.
Yeah. Again with the like, but that makes no sense that you would just like consider it and then not do anything. And 2018 as well, just like breaks me that it's had to, that is only that recent when people are like, oh, maybe we do owe a duty of care to the people that are here watching our event.
Yeah.
That presumably they want people out watching because that's going to get them
More sponsors, more money.
more exposure.
Yeah. So Mr. Bennett's recommendations were that there be a specific spectator safety team formed whose role would be ensuring spectators are effectively managed and controlled.
Well, that's so difficult over such a vast distance.
Yeah. That pairs of roving officials be given lengths of the track to cover and patrol during the event, which would allow them to identify hotspots that needed closer management. That a formal exclusion zone be created along the entire course to keep spectators from the edge of the track by setting a minimum distance from the edge of the track on both sides. That this exclusion zone be well publicised prior to the event, confirmed by the course checker, set up crews and monitored by the spectator safety team. So yeah, again, making sure the people who are going to watch it are aware of that exclusion zone. This report was provided to the FDRI president on the 4th of October 2018. And as a bit of a side note, that president has actually kept that role since then, so he's been consistent throughout. Yeah. The president acknowledged the report and said that he would provide it to the race committee, but there was no evidence at inquest that actually happened at that time. There was no evidence of any of these recommendations being implemented for the 2019 or 2021 races. There was no race in 2020 because of COVID. On the 24th of April 2019, the president said in an email about procedures for risk management, "We don't have much of this at all. The procedures we have are pretty average."
Okay, that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, and from the president of the association, clearly admitting that things aren't great.
I think non-existent is the word you're looking for.
Yes. On the same day, the vice president of the race committee emailed Risk Reliance for help with a risk assessment of the 2019 race, which hadn't yet happened. He said, "We are severely lacking in the appropriate processes and documentation from a legal and basic level." A copy of the 2018 Bennett report was sent to him on the 1st of May 2019. Risk Reliance prepared the 2019 Finke Desert Race Risk Assessment Report, and it was provided to FDRI on the 20th of May 2019. The risk of death posed by the race to a competitor or spectator, and multiple deaths, was extreme, and the consequences of that from a legal and financial perspective would be severe. The risk of death to a spectator was deemed likely, and the report recommended that immediate action be taken.
I really struggle with the legal and financial consequences being like the emphasis of why they need to make this change.
There was no evidence as to what, if any, actions were taken by FDRI to address this before the 2019 race in June.
Yeah, I was going to say May seemed quite late for them to be considering for this particular event.
The race committee then asked Risk Reliance for a risk audit of the 2019 race. The risk audit identified that spectators were situated on the outside of corners, which is
Dangerous, yep.
and had access to the start and finish line when high-speed vehicles were approaching it.
Goody.
It was suggested that high-risk corners could be managed with bunting and signage, and recommended that the organisers install signage and barricade tape in accordance with the FIA Rally Guidelines 2019, Section 4.
What is FIA, sorry?
Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile.
Oh,
It's French.
yeah.
This section of the rallying guidelines addresses spectator safety and states that spectator areas should be marked with green tape, closed on both sides to control spectators, and controlled by marshals. Red tape is used to define prohibited areas where spectators may be expected to congregate, and is for any zone considered dangerous, for example, the outside of corners and landing after jumps, which is essentially where Nigel was.
Yeah.
The prohibited area no-go signs should be used to designate all other areas or sections prohibited to the public, and these areas should be marshalled. So essentially there should either be green tape, red tape, or no-go signs.
But red tape was indicating you also shouldn't be here?
So I think, the green tape is where you're allowed to be, but it's keeping you a distance away from the track.
Yeah.
Red is you're not allowed to be here at all.
Yeah.
And then if there's any other prohibited areas that they have no-go
No-go
signs.
signs. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would think that the red tape would blend into the red landscape.
I guess they're trying to use some sort of marking system.
No, I get it. I'm just like, red, couldn't it be? I know, and red is like, don't go, but like, it's just not a very good contrasting colour.
But I would have just assumed the red tape again would be similar. Like, oh, it's just barricading me from where I
Yeah.
can be. Like, I feel like the distinction between the green and the red tape isn't necessarily super helpful. Because it's like,
Yeah, you'd need to know what it meant.
yeah, I can just stand here because I'm now behind a bit of tape, which seems very similar to the purpose of the green tape.
Unless there's actually people around telling you, no, you can't stand there.
Yeah.
The evidence at the inquest showed that this recommendation was not implemented for the 2021 or 2022 races. So the bunting that was in the area where Nigel was white. A short time after the 2019 race, someone who was part of the media contingent for that race sent a video to the Director of Motorsport and Commercial Operations at CAMS, which showed spectators standing dangerously close to the track. He said that he thought there would be an accident and that the speed at the finish line was risky. And so he obviously felt strongly enough about that he was willing to send a video
Yeah.
in to say, look, this is
Not
a
ideal.
problem at this event. That director forwarded the video to the CAMS safety team, and a meeting on spectators was arranged. Also in June 2019, the 2018 Bennett report was recirculated in CAMS. The man who had put the report together, so Mr. Bennett, provided more information via email, saying he followed up the FDRI president in January 2019 but received no reply, and he thought FDRI decided not to implement his recommendations. He also said, I haven't followed it up, as they clearly didn't agree with what I wrote, or probably more likely, what I suggested was going to be too much work for their liking. And I could just feel his frustration that he's asked to provide this report, did so, and they've done nothing at all. And he's followed them up, and they've still done nothing. And he's being contacted again about his report. It's like, I've already...
Yeah, he's provided his duty of like, I submitted it. But then I also followed up to see whether they were going to implement it. And they still elected not to. So at that point I was like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
Bye.
And he keeps getting roped into it. At the inquest, the coroner was unable to find out if that spectator meeting even happened. And there was no evidence of any decisions to mitigate spectator risk.
And then I feel like 2020 threw everything off. And then by 2021, they'd just forgotten all problems.
After the 2019 race, the chief steward prepared a report which was given to a few employees and CAMs. So his findings were: the event was largely under the control of the FDRI president, who didn't seem to be CAMs licensed, and who should not be appointed again as race director.
Sorry, I know that he was, though. Anyway, go on.
Until CAMs were satisfied that he meets the standard CAMs would require of such a person in charge of a high-risk event. The CAMs clerk, of course, did not seem to have a direct control over the conduct of the event. A recommendation that there be 2 assistant clerks, of course, positions that didn't exist for the 2019 race. That there was no critical incident plan. That spectator safety was a major concern. And so an example of this was a family who had camped in the fork of the track.
What?
An area that definitely fit the description of a no-go zone.
Yeah.
The family refused to move, and it was reported to the race organisers, who said that they had no power over spectators on the track.
Which, like, if that was a private property, they probably didn't.
The committee explained to him that they could only control the area around the start of the track at Alice and the finish area at Finke, and the rest is up to the Northern Territory Police. So they're essentially putting it back on the Northern Territory Police, saying, well, we can't control them. Like, we can't make them move. Only the police can do that.
Surely you have to have some kind of regulation. Because, like, they're using roads that, like, other people have to be on then?
Yeah, and so whatever roads they were driving on were obviously closed to any other traffic.
So who's responsible for, like, closure and stuff like that?
I assume it would be the event organisers as a whole who would be responsible for that, in coordination with the police.
Whoever's responsible for being able to close a road, therefore, has to be responsible for management around the roads.
Yes.
Can't be entirely on the police. The organisers have instigated this in some way.
Yeah.
So you can't then just tap out and be like, nah, not our responsibility, or not at all related to us in any way.
Yeah. There was also an incident where a buggy left the track, ran over 2 tracks, and landed in the fork of a tree.
Oh.
A short time earlier, there had been 2 young people on those tracks, which were flattened. Very much a close call in that case. And a number of competitors expressed concerns about how close to the track spectators were, and that they wanted the spectators in safer positions.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. As competitors, you would be not on board with how close they could get.
From a purely selfish perspective, it's going to slow you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about hitting people
Yeah.
as you're driving, you are not going to be going as fast. This report was given to senior members of CAMS, but there's no evidence of anything being actually done about it, as is a recurring theme.
Yes. Then did the director become CAMS qualified as mentioned by them?
They never
Mention that?
mentioned
Okay,
that.
so let's assume no.
On the 6th of April 2020, Mr. Bennett emailed 2 Motorsport Australia employees who were part of the safety team. When referring to his 2018 report, he said, "My review document pretty much spelt out what I consider the risks to be and potential methods to address these. Is that the direction you'd like us to head? Were you looking for something different? What I'd like now is some indication from you as to the desired outcome from our perspective."
He is still quite upset.
Yeah.
He's not okay with this.
Yeah. One of the employees emailed him back suggesting a meeting, but there's no evidence that that meeting actually happened.
Man, he would have been so frustrated. Oh.
And it continues. So 6 weeks later, on the 13th of May 2020, Mr. Bennett emailed the FDRI president, referred to his 2018 report, and asked whether anything had been implemented and whether they needed any assistance. He also said that with just over a year until the next race, they felt it was a good time to get the ball rolling.
It's going to take so long.
Yeah, it takes
Yeah.
a while to organise.
There's no evidence that there was any response to this email or any action taken.
As
Oh my
is
gosh.
becoming a theme.
But, like, Credit to this guy. He's been following him up for
trying.
2 years.
Yeah. He's like, hey, do we want to... Should we do something? I'd really like to do something.
So spectator safety wasn't discussed again until the 21st of May 2020, when a Motorsport Australia employee reported to another employee about another event, but also mentioned Finke and reiterated his concerns that spectator intrusion onto the track at Finke, which is very difficult to police. A few weeks later, on the first day of the 2021 Finke race, that second employee forwarded this to the Director of Motorsport and Commercial Operations.
By then, it's already the day one of the race.
Yeah, and
so,
the next
what are you
day
gonna
is when
change?
Nigel died. So there were obviously rules that the Finke race had to follow since it was sanctioned by Motorsport Australia. So with regards to spectator safety, the regulations stated, when spectator attendance can be expected, it is the organiser's responsibility to provide safe viewing facilities. All events must comply with the Motorsport Australia off-road spectator safety procedures. For certain events, Motorsport Australia may require the appointment to the organising committee of a person with responsibility for spectator control, like that is your only responsibility. And every spectator point must be manned by clearly identified spectator marshals who must work under the direction of a senior marshal. Areas in which spectators are prohibited must be clearly identified. So these are all rules that they should have been following the whole time
Yeah.
for it to be a sanctioned event.
And it's frustrating that therefore it continued to be a sanctioned event.
Exactly.
Even though that was not compliant.
So these public safety and control procedures, prior to Finke 2018, there were no publicly available guidelines for spectator control or safety for event organisers within the off-road discipline. The concern was raised and discussed post-Finke 2018, which led to the publishing of the document Public Safety and Control Procedures for Off-Road. Essentially, the document covers key information, templates for event organisers, diagrams of no standing areas, and public viewpoints. Section 7, Spectator Control Marshals, briefly covers how spectator points should be managed. However, Finke's distance presented additional challenges with how to implement that. Public viewpoints are an attempt to encourage spectators to use these areas where their safety can be controlled and monitored. A joint institutional response from Motorsport Australia and FDRI provided to the inquest claimed that the public safety and control procedures did not apply to the Finke race in 2021, which the coroner said was false.
Agreed.
They're like, our defence is they didn't apply to us.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like,
I think they just said, nah, they didn't apply. And
in what way do they not apply?
clearly the coroner said, no, I think they do apply. So, for the 2021 race, the position of Chief Spectator Marshal was left unfilled,
Yes.
and they did not make any provision for the appointment of Spectator Safety Marshals.
Oh, so they were just going to have a chief that was just patrolling the 250 kilometres?
Yeah, by himself. So despite this, Motorsport Australia sanctioned the event,
Yeah.
going directly against the rules that they already had in place.
So again, I'm assuming you're going to go into this, but like, therefore they get penalised as well?
Nope.
Oh, that's annoying.
So it seems that the FDRI president was happy for spectators to manage their own safety.
Have you met people?
Exactly. Especially a group of people. They're all trying to get a good view.
Yeah, and like that crowd momentum. So like one person takes a step forward, which means everyone else
Exactly.
takes a step forward.
Yep.
And then someone else takes a step forward, which means everyone else takes a step forward.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're in the middle of the track.
Yeah.
Like, and you just get caught up in the moment. You need other reminders and like advice.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
So now we'll go through what safety measures were actually in place for the 2021 race.
Oh, is this a long list or a...
Not particularly. The safety planning relied heavily on safety messages being received, understood, and accurately applied by spectators. Their safety campaign included stay back from the track, don't stand on the outside of corners, you can't steer when you're flying, which I thought was a good one.
That is interesting.
Look out for your mates, because it's your responsibility to look after your friends. Speed of 200 kilometres per hour or 55 metres per second. And you wouldn't camp on the edge of a highway, don't camp on the edge of a racetrack.
We're in the fork of the track.
Safety warnings were placed on the Finke website, Finke Desert Race official program, and Z cards, which I think were just like leaflets essentially that they handed out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. on signs at the entrance to the start-finish line, at key spectator sites, and on the public television screen at the start and finish line. The inquest did also have a picture of the standard warning at the entrance to it.
Yeah, but like, was that at the start line?
Yeah, I think it was when you entered, but it's contingent on you being at the start-finish line.
Yeah, what if you were coming from 100 kilometres away? Were you going back through the start line to come back to where you were?
Probably not. Unsafe areas were identified in the official program and on Z cards using a diagram showing some aspects of the track with yellow shading around the track and red hatching on some parts of the yellow shading. So it's like, here's a left-hand corner, and there's some of it that's red hatched, and then there's some of the red hatch that also has yellow shading. But it wasn't made clear whether it was the whole yellow area or just the red hatched areas that were unsafe.
Right.
Okay.
There was no
Key or
legend.
Yeah, okay. That's unhelpful.
There was no track signage to identify dangerous areas for spectators, and they were not marked on the track map. Nigel had a copy of the official program, so he probably had some exposure to the safety messaging. On the other hand, the spectator who was injured in the accident had no awareness of the safety messaging.
Oh. Okay, sure.
Yeah, like he said that he did have one of the official programs that he looked at after the accident.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, yeah, there's some safety information in there, but he didn't read it before.
I probably shouldn't have been standing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That spectator also said that he was in that location because there were other people already there, so he thought it was a good spot and probably assumed it was a safe place to be.
Crowd mentality.
Yep. There were actually 2 FDRI volunteers sitting in a sweep vehicle at the top of the 35-kilometre sand dune, about 30 to 40 metres away from the accident. Their role was to check the track from the 30-kilometre mark to the finish line for safety issues after the last car had gone through and before the motorcycle started.
Yep.
They were not safety marshals and had received no safety marshal training or any training on how to deal with spectators. There was no evidence that Nigel or the other injured spectator was spoken to by these volunteers about their location. And the inquest sort of went into the fact that chances are Nigel and the others probably would have listened if someone official had come up to them and said, you need to move back.
Yeah.
But they were never approached by anyone.
And like, you know, how hard is it if you've got any kind of volunteers to just give them a brief, like, well, wherever you are, like maybe just this is some safety stuff you can implement if you happen to be there.
Yeah.
You know?
If you see something that you think is unsafe. Yeah.
But also not even like if you think these are the kinds of situations if you see. Because the volunteers may not necessarily have a great understanding of what is safe. So they need a little bit of education around what is or isn't safe. And then if you see it, do this. And empowering them to do it. Because I guess if they're volunteers, they may not have felt they could have.
Yeah. And yeah, if they've received no training, they're like, well, my role is to check the track.
Do this. Yeah.
In the final stewards report of the 2021 race, it stated competitors reported that there were numerous instances of spectators being in extremely high-risk positions.
Yeah.
On the 19th of June 2021, the author of that report emailed another Motorsport Australia employee a proposal for improving safety at Finke Desert Race, which stated, the control of the track and spectators is as noted in previous reports, and there were serious deficiencies as to who has responsibility for those spectators, which increases the risk for everyone and needs to be enhanced and authority established to control spectators entering the track. He made recommendations about safety, and they were legislation to declare the track and surrounds a controlled site for 14 days prior to the Friday commencement and for 5 days after.
Wow. That's a reasonable duration.
Yeah. The track surrounds to be declared 100 metres either side of the track to enable greater controls of spectators. That as part of the legislation, designated spectator areas be determined, marked and secured prior to the event and publicised well prior to the event.
Yeah, I would have thought like with such a vast length of track, like or race or whatever, just say detailing you may observe from this and this location makes that control so much easier. It still risks people going to the wrong spots because they've not read the information or because they want to break the rules or whatever. But at least you try to get majority of the people doing the right thing in those right locations. And it might be at like cool corners where you are getting to see, you know, good action of the race, but
where there are people there to make sure you're in a safe spot.
Yeah, but you're far enough away from that action.
authority be given to police and designated officials to control competitor and spectator activity, including the ability to move on persons in unsafe areas. The resource necessary to maintain constant surveillance of the Finke track be provided, so 2 helicopters and long-range drones with high-resolution video cameras, with video relayed back to race control.
Wow.
Cool. Fun.
Approximately 40 boundary riders with 2-way radios who can be rapidly deployed to sites where spectators are in risky positions, with the authority to move spectators on and cameras to capture the faces of spectators who do not comply.
Ooh.
What are you going to do with that
Your
footage?
face is captured.
Ban them?
Yeah, just be like,
Report them
at the
to the
beginning of the race,
police.
being like, you cannot not
Yeah.
permitted at this race anymore.
We're going to put your face on the board at the front.
The entrance, they'll have their faces
The
pinned up
shame
there.
board.
If you see this person, tell them to fuck off. They're not welcome here.
Yeah. After the 2021 race, a governance committee was established with members of Motorsport Australia, FDRI and Motorcycle Australia to be responsible for updating and improving the spectator management plan for 2022. In May 2022, an information paper for the Risk and Safety Committee was prepared, which stated key inclusions for the 2022 spectator management plan, including designated spectator zones set up and managed by spectator marshals. There were some significant changes to the plan since 2021, for example, roving safety marshals, improved signage, and a recommendation to spectators that they stand 20 metres back from the track and camp 30 metres from the track. Despite these changes, there was still a member of Motorsport Australia Risk and Safety Committee who was concerned about the plan, saying it was not a safety plan of substance. It does not stack up. Maybe parts of it are missing from what was sent to us.
Oh.
Oh.
Harsh.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. But yet you still sanctioned the event. You sanctioned it to go ahead. You can't say that. And then be like, but it's fine.
but yeah.
You can still run it.
Yeah.
You say, no, you cannot run this event until you do send us all of the information
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, that was one single person who...
Yes, it was a single
Yeah.
person, yeah. They also referenced items like a list of spectator marshals, a detailed diagram of no-go areas, and a setup schedule for the fencing and a signage schedule as well that they essentially wanted to see. The Motorsport Australia Risk and Safety Committee held a meeting a few days later, but there was no record of what issues were discussed or how they would be addressed.
Do they not understand minutes of meetings?
Apparently not, no.
Okay. All right.
On the 27th of May 2022, the FDRI president was requested to send a map of the designated spectator zones and the number of volunteers recruited as spectator marshals. He responded by saying that they had recruited 8 to 10 marshals and hoped to recruit more.
Fingers crossed. Didn't they want 40?
Yeah, someone's recommendation was the 40 boundary riders
Right.
with the radios who could move people on. But
Okay.
this is like, yeah, spectator marshals.
Yep.
As to designated spectator areas, he said, as with previous years, we aren't having designated spectator zones, other than the start line in Alice Springs, and that it is impractical to have designated spectator zones along the track.
Wait, didn't their safety plan say that they would?
So
What?
despite all of that, Motorsport Australia allowed the 2022 race to proceed.
Ugh. So they learnt nothing and did
Did
a
nothing.
few things. They did a few things. They hired 8 to 10 people.
They got 8 to 10 volunteers. They didn't pay them.
They enlisted 8 to 10 volunteers, which were probably volunteers that they've volunteered every year, but they just
Yeah.
gave them a different title this year.
Yeah.
And happy days.
Yep.
Oh.
The coroner found that the bunting at the 35-kilometre dune was not in accordance with the FIA rally safety guidelines, as recommended by Reliance Risk, and was inadequate to reflect the dangers of the location. In fact, its placement may have misled Nigel and other spectators to assume that the location they chose beyond the bunting was not an unsafe area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the bunting had ended. The bunting is where you're not
Yeah.
meant to be.
Right.
So,
But realistically, it was just they didn't have that much bunting, so they just put out like some.
They just ran out of bunting.
it was the coroner's opinion that the 35-kilometre sand dune should have been a designated public viewing point with all of the safety features that needed, in that the green bunting to show this as a designated area, far enough back from the track. You're only allowed in the green area.
So it was fine for people to watch there.
Yeah,
but
fine
they
for
just
people to
said,
watch
okay.
there, but from an appropriate location.
Yeah. Yeah, because probably would have been one of the highlights of the track.
Yeah,
right?
like that's the reason why there were a whole bunch of people
Yeah.
there. It's because it's a good place to be. At the time of the inquest, although there were many recommendations made by many different people, none of them were implemented. And the coroner couldn't find any good reason why they hadn't been.
That's not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
No.
Is the director still the director?
I think as of 2023, he is.
See, this is the thing, like, why does this director still exist if he's not directing the organisation in a way that is encouraging good practice and good behaviour, such as making sure that the spectators are safe? I don't want to harp on, like, one particular person, but, like, if you're the director of this organisation, you need to be putting more pressure on that being a priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, now a solid 5 years since they've been concerned. Or enough concerns that you directly were aware of it, because that report made it directly to you and there's evidence of that.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't read it, that makes you negligent.
Yep. And if you didn't do anything about it.
If you're pretending like you're unaware of it, that makes you negligent, but we also know you must be. And now there's also been a death
Yeah.
that, like, can directly relate to said report.
Yeah.
That, to me, makes no sense that director should still be there.
Yeah.
If this was a more public company, like, there was a bigger organisation, that director would not still be there.
Absolutely. So the coroner's recommendations, I've distilled them into two. The government department responsible for making recommendations to the minister prior to the granting of the approval for the race ensure that adequate spectator safety measures have been implemented prior to the granting of any approvals. And that this government department also received from the race organisers a comprehensive spectator management plan that sufficiently, adequately and appropriately mitigates the risk to spectators posed by the race. And I've just had a look. So this inquest only came out very recently.
Yeah, it would
like
have.
in the last couple of weeks. And the 2023 Finke race went ahead.
Oh, yeah, right. In June.
Now, basically.
Yeah. And I'm just reading a news article that said that they apparently came very close to saying that it wasn't going to be a car event, that it would just be the motorbike portion of the race going
Because
ahead.
of safety?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And this is a quote. But with the support of the Northern Territory government, we've been able to collectively negotiate our way out of it.
Oh, wait, what? That's not... No, with the support of the government, we've implemented better changes so that this is a safe event.
That's not what he said. It does say, following the inquest, further work has been undertaken to improve safety. But the National Motorsport Regulator only issued a permit for the car section of the race on Friday morning, which was the Friday before it went ahead on the weekend.
Wow. This is from the Finke Desert Race website that says, under personal safety, the biggest risk to the Finke Desert Race is a spectator being injured or worse. Don't forget that the competitors are concentrating on racing. They are not looking for you, your kids, or your dog. Please always stand back from the track and never stand on the outside of corners. Nothing about, we are concerned for your safety and would like you to be safe.
No, you better not jeopardize this race.
You better not jeopardize your own safety.
Yep. Interestingly, on their website as well, they've changed the distance back from the track to 30 metres.
Well, that's
So
good.
I think the previous year it had been like, don't stand 20 metres, but now it's
Yeah,
30
that's-
metres. But again, that's literally just words on a website.
Yeah, and it's very person accountability rather
Yes.
than organisation accountability.
absolutely.
Which, if you're running this, I think that there should be... I mean, ideally, people should be accountable for their own actions in a sense of
Well,
safety.
kind of have
but,
to be.
Yeah.
but like, again, thinking about where might be safe to stand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, if you're unaware of the risks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I've just got two more things that were actually not... They were just interesting things about this inquest in
Please.
particular. So although that joint institutional response from Motorsport Australia and FDRI was provided to the inquest, the coroner believed that there was more to the story, so requested additional documents.
Interesting.
1,800 extra documents were provided, which were not sorted or in chronological order.
Oh, that is definitely a delay tactic.
Yeah, so counsel assisting had to go through all of them to figure out which ones were relevant
Yeah, right.
and which ones weren't. And the coroner was essentially like, we may have missed something
Because
of the sheer volume of what we had to go through and sort through.
yeah, right.
So I don't think the coroner was particularly happy.
Or impressed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just such a waste of court's time.
Yeah.
Coroner's inquests already take years to be released because of the sheer volume of work that they have.
Yeah, and like this was a pretty quick one. It was only in essentially 2 years ago that the death happened.
Yeah, wow.
The other thing was almost all of the people called to give evidence from Motorsport Australia and Finke Desert Race Incorporated objected to giving evidence on the grounds their evidence may incriminate them in offences under the Work Health and Safety Act 2011. The coroner was asked to provide a certificate which would prevent any evidence given being used against the witness, and the coroner can give this when it appears expedient for the purposes of justice that the person be compelled to answer the question.
And did the coroner grant it?
He declined all of those certificates except one.
Interesting. It compelled them to give evidence except for one person, or he didn't compel anyone except for one single individually?
I think it was... Oh, he was asked to give a certificate to say that if any evidence given wouldn't be used against them, and he didn't give those. So essentially...
He just let them all say nothing.
Or say what they wanted to say.
Yeah, he didn't compel anyone to, except for one individual that he did compel.
Well, yes, correct.
Yeah.
But in the instance that they weren't going to... They couldn't then use that against them. Yeah.
Was there any recommendation to Work Health and Safety to investigate? Like, I wonder if there's
No.
It's not in the recommendation, but I wonder if that therefore triggers Work Health and Safety to be like,
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I don't know how quickly Work Health and Safety,
look into
how their
this stuff.
investigations
Or how that
go.
all is intertwined. Wonder what regulation they're all nervous about. But obviously they'd all clearly discussed with each other if they're all coming into it.
And they'd probably gotten legal advice as
they
well
probably have
beforehand.
an organisational legal team that therefore is just saying, don't say anything.
Yeah, essentially.
I mean, we do this because we want to discuss the ways that as a society we can improve risks as a whole rather than to a specific individual.
Yeah.
And so to think that there's a team of people collaborating to prevent safety is frustrating.
It sort of blows my mind that it's been years of recommendations by various people, near misses, competitors being concerned about spectator safety, and yet nothing has been, like, even after this
Why are they
death,
resisting
that
so
things
hard?
were still not improving that much.
Yeah, and I mean, the coroner put it that, like, there was no reason why nothing had been done.
Nothing had been done. So it's just kind of baffling. And then the Motorsport Australia continues to sanction the event.
Yeah.
But, like, clearly I would assume there's money involved because, like, they've got major sponsors.
Yeah.
I was looking at the prize money this year for the winner, I think, of the car category or whatever was $10,000.
Yeah, right.
It's not insignificant.
So,
Again, it would be hard. It's a very long distance.
yeah.
It wouldn't be an easy thing to do, but I certainly think that there are small things that could be done,
Yeah.
even to, like, small steps forward, and yet they're still resistant to that.
Also in this news article, they're talking about they've got that minimum 30-metre setback from the track, which I don't know that that's necessarily...
Strict.
Yeah, they tell them to do it, but
Yeah.
is there any bunting? Who knows? As well as added spectator exclusion zones and off-limit zones at high-risk areas. So potentially there is some
Okay, that's
bunting
slightly
and or
better.
people there.
That's slightly better. Okay.
And the president said the organising committee had gone to great lengths to ramp up safety. There'll be a significant number of people that will be displaced from where they've been in previous years.
The language that gets used,
It's not positive, is
it's
it?
not
No.
displaced.
Yeah, it's,
Stop.
we're doing this, but, like,
We're doing this because we have to.
but yeah, we're
Yeah.
a bit disgruntled and
They're basically like, oh, this guy died and now we have to do all this
So it's just one of those ones that I read and was very frustrated. And I feel for Mr. Bennett, whose report was continually ignored since 2018, despite him following up for many years.
and then having to come to this inquest and being like,
Yes.
yep,
I told them here, and I told them here, and I told them
here
here.
is my evidence of all of the things.
Yep.
That is very frustrating.
Hopefully there's no more deaths, and also hopefully...
2024 race, are we going and just picketing at the front being like,
Oh no.
Maybe they'll get a new president. Let's hope.
doesn't seem like it.
No, it's been in there for a long time.
New director or new, like, person with some authority could lead to a whole different scenario.
Or even just Motorsport Australia not giving, and the government not giving them the go-ahead.
Yeah.
I assume that there's a proportion of people who would come into the area and therefore be spending money in the area
yeah.
that they wouldn't want to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And they probably can actually have an idea based on 2020 being cancelled. Pros and cons to COVID is that like you actually see the impact of the event not being held has. That there would be a strong incentive as to why it needs to go ahead, but yeah, it's tough.
Do better.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for listening. We will catch you later. Bye.
Bye.